The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck, Chapter 24. On Saturday morning the washtubs were crowded. The women washed dresses, pink ginghams, and flowered cottons, and they hung them in the sun and stretched the cloth to smooth it. When afternoon came, the whole camp quickened, and the people grew excited. The children caught the fever and were more noisy than usual. About mid-afternoon child bathing began, and as each child was caught, subdued, and washed, the noise on the playground gradually subsided. Before 5, the children were scrubbed and warned about getting dirty again, and they walked about, stiff in clean clothes, miserable with carefulness. At the big open-air dance platform, a committee was busy. Every bit of electric wire had been requisitioned. The city dump had been visited for wire, every toolbox had contributed friction tape, and now the patched, spliced wire was strung out to the dance floor with bottlenecks as insulators. This night the floor would be lighted for the first time. By 6 o'clock the men were back from work or from looking for work, and a new wave of bathing started. By 7 dinners were over, men had on their best clothes, freshly washed overalls, clean blue shirts, sometimes the decent blacks. The girls were ready in their print dresses, stretched and clean, their hair braided and ribboned. The worried women watched the families and cleaned up the evening dishes. On the platform the string band practiced, surrounded by a double wall of children. The people were intent and excited. In the tent of Ezra Houston, chairman, the central committee of 5 men went into meeting. Houston, a tall, spare man, wind-blackened, with eyes like little blades, spoke to his committee, one man from each sanitary unit. "It's goddamn lucky we got the word they was going to try to bust up the dance," he said. The tubby little representative from Unit 3 spoke up. "I think we ought to squash the hell out of them and show them." "No," said Houston, "that's what they want." "No, sir, if they can get a fight going, then they can run in the cops and say we ain't orderly. They tried it before, other places." He turned to the sad, dark boy from Unit 2. "Got the fellas together to go around the fences and see nobody sneaks in?" The sad boy nodded. "Yeah, 12. Told 'em not to hit nobody, just push 'em out again." Houston said, "Will you go out and find Willie Eaton? He's chairman of the entertainment, ain't he?" "Yeah." "Well, tell him we want to see him." The boy went out, and he returned in a moment with a stringy Texas man. Willie Eaton had a long, fragile jaw and dust-colored hair. His arms and legs were long and loose, and he had the gray, sunburned eyes of the panhandle. He stood in the tent grinning, and his hands pivoted restlessly on his wrists. Houston said, "You heard about tonight?" Willie grinned. "Yeah." "Did anything about it?" "Yeah." "Tell what you done." Willie Eaton grinned happily. "Well, sir, ordinary entertainment committee is 5. I got 20 more, all good, strong boys. They're going to be a-dancing and a-keeping their eyes open and their ears open. First sign, any talk or argument, they close in tight. Worked her out pretty nice. Can't even see nothing. Kind of move out, and the fellow will go out with them. Tell 'em they ain't to hurt the fellas." Willie laughed gleefully. "I told 'em," he said. "Well, tell 'em so they know." "They know. Got 5 men out to the gate looking over the folks that comes in. Try to spot 'em before they get started." Houston stood up. His steel-colored eyes were stern. "Now you look here, Willie. We don't want them fellas hurt. There's going to be deputies out by the front gate. If you blood 'em up, why, them deputies will get you." "Got that there figured out," said Willie. "Take 'em out the back way into the field. Some of the boys will see they get on their way." "Well, it sounds all right," Houston said worriedly. "But don't you let nothing happen, Willie. You're responsible. Don't you hurt them fellas. Don't you use no stick, nor no knife or iron, or nothing like that." "No, sir," said Willie. "We won't mark 'em." Houston was suspicious. "I wished I knowed I could trust you, Willie. If you got to sock 'em where they won't bleed." "Yes, sir," said Willie. "You sure of the fellas you picked?" "Yes, sir." "All right, and if she gets out of hand, I'll be in the right-hand corner, this way on the dance floor." Willie saluted in mockery and went out. Houston said, "I don't know. I just hope Willie's boys don't kill nobody. What the hell the deputies want to hurt the camp for? Why can't they let us be?" The sad boy from Unit 2 said, "I lived out at Sunland Land and Cattle Company's place. Honest to God, they got a cop for every 10 people. Got one water faucet for about 200 people." The tubby man said, "Jesus God, Jeremy, you ain't got to tell me. I was there. They got a block of shacks, 35 of them in a row, and 15 deep, and they got 10 crappers for the whole shebang. And Christ, you could smell 'em a mile. One of them deputies give me the lowdown. We was setting around, and he says, 'Them goddamn government camps,' he says, Give people hot water and they're going to want hot water. Give them flush toilets and they're going to want them. He says, you give them goddamn Okie stuff like that and they'll want them. And he says, they hold red meetings in them government camps, all figuring how to get on relief, he says. Houston asked, didn't nobody sock him? No, there was a little fella, and he says, what you mean, relief? I mean relief, what us taxpayers put in and you goddamn Okies takes out. We pay sales tax and gas tax and tobacco tax, this little guy says. And he says, farmers get 4 cents a cotton pound from the government. Ain't that relief? And he says, railroads and shipping companies draw subsidies. Ain't that relief? They're doing stuff, got to be done, this deputy says. Well, the little guy says, how'd your goddamn crops get picked if it wasn't for us? The tubby man looked around. What'd the deputy say? Houston asked. Well, the deputy got mad, and he says, you goddamn Reds is all the time stirring up trouble, he says. You better come along with me. So he takes this little guy in, and they give him 60 days in jail for vagrancy. How'd they do that if he had a job? Asked Timothy Wallace. The tubby man laughed. You know better than that, he said. You know a vagrant is anybody a cop don't like. And that's why they hate this here camp. No cops can get in. This here's United States, not California. Houston sighed. Wished we could stay here. Got to be going before long. I like this here. Folks gets along nice, and God almighty, why can't they let us do it instead of keeping us miserable and putting us in jail? I swear to God they're going to push us into fighting if they don't quit worrying us. Then he calmed his voice. We just got to keep peaceful. He reminded himself the committee got no right to fly off the handle. The tubby man from Unit 3 said, anybody that thinks this committee got all cheese and crackers ought to just try her. There was a fight in my unit today. Women got to calling names and then got to throwing garbage. Ladies' committee couldn't handle it and they come to me. Want me to bring the fight in this here committee. I told them they got to handle women trouble themselves. This here committee ain't gonna mess with no garbage fights. Houston nodded. You done good, he said. And now the dusk was falling, and as the darkness deepened, the practicing of the string band seemed to grow louder. The lights flashed on, and 2 men inspected the patched wire to the dance floor. The children crowded thickly about the musicians. A boy with a guitar sang the down-home blues, chording delicately for himself, and on his second chorus 3 harmonicas and a fiddle joined him. From the tents, the people streamed toward the platform, men in their clean blue denim and women in their ginghams. They came near to the platform and then stood quietly waiting, their faces bright and intent under the light. Around the reservation there was a high wire fence, and along the fence, at intervals of 50 feet, the guards sat in the grass and waited. Now the cars of the guests began to arrive, small farmers and their families, migrants from other camps. And as each guest came through the gate, he mentioned the name of the camper who had invited him. The string band took a real tune up and played loudly, for they were not practicing any more. In front of their tents the Jesus lovers sat and watched, their faces hard and contemptuous. They did not speak to one another. They watched for sin, and their faces condemned the whole proceeding. At the Joe tent, Ruthie and Winfield had bolted what little dinner they had, and then they started for the platform. Ma called them back, held up their faces with a hand under each chin, and looked into their nostrils, pulled their ears and looked inside, and sent them to the sanitary unit to wash their hands once more. They dodged around the back of the building and bolted for the platform to stand among the children, close packed about the band. Al finished his dinner and spent half an hour shaving with Tom's razor. Al had a tight-fitting wool suit and a striped shirt, and he bathed and washed and combed his straight hair back. And when the washroom was vacant for a moment, he smiled engagingly at himself in the mirror, and he turned and tried to see himself in profile when he smiled. He slipped his purple armbands on and put on his tight coat, and he rubbed up his yellow shoes with a piece of toilet paper. A late bather came in, and Al hurried out and walked recklessly toward the platform, his eyes peeled for girls. Near the dance floor he saw a pretty blonde girl sitting in front of a tent. He sidled near and threw open his coat to show his shirt. "Gonna dance tonight?" he asked. The girl looked away and did not answer. "Can't a fella pass a word with you? How about you and me dancing?" And he said nonchalantly, "I can waltz." The girl raised her eyes shyly, and she said, "That ain't nothing. Anybody can waltz." "Not like me," said Al. The music surged, and he tapped one foot in time. "Come on," he said. A very fat woman poked her head out of the tent and scowled at him. "You get along," she said fiercely. "This here girl's spoken for. She's going to be married, and her man's coming for her." Al winked rakishly at the girl, and he tripped on, striking his feet to the music and swaying his shoulders and swinging his arms. And the girl looked after him intently. Pa put down his plate and stood up. "Come on, John," he said, and he explained to Ma, "We're going to talk to some fellas about getting work." And Pa and Uncle John walked toward the manager's house. Tom worked a piece of store bread into the stew gravy on his plate and ate the bread. He handed his plate to Ma, and she put it in the bucket of hot water and washed it and handed it to Rosasharn to wipe. "Ain't you going to the dance?" Ma asked. "Sure," said Tom. "I'm on a committee. We're going to entertain some fellas." "Already on a committee?" Ma said. "I guess it's 'cause you got work." Rosasharn turned to put the dish away. Tom pointed at her. "My God, she's getting big," he said. Rosasharn blushed and took another dish from Ma. "Sure she is," Ma said. "And she's getting prettier," said Tom. The girl blushed more deeply and hung her head. "You stop it," she said softly. "Course she is," said Ma. "A girl with a baby always gets prettier." Tom laughed. "If she keeps swelling like this, she's going to need a wheelbarrow to carry it." "Now you stop," Rosasharn said, and she went inside the tent out of sight. Ma chuckled. "You shouldn't ought to worry her." "She likes it," said Tom. "I know she likes it, but it worries her too, and she's mourning for Connie." "Well, she might as well give him up. He's probably studying to be President of the United States by now." "Don't worry her," Ma said. "She ain't got no easy row to hoe." Willie Eaton moved near, and he grinned and said, "You Tom Joad?" "Yeah." "Well, I'm chairman of the entertainment committee. We're going to need you. Fella told me about you." "Sure, I'll play with you," said Tom. "This here's Ma." "Howdy," said Willie. "Glad to meet you." Willie said, "Gonna put you on the gate to start, and then on the floor. Want you to look over the guys when they come in and try to spot 'em. You'll be with another fella. Then later I want you to dance and watch." "Yeah, I can do that all right," said Tom. Ma said apprehensively, "There ain't no trouble?" "No, ma'am," Willie said. "There ain't gonna be no trouble." "None at all," said Tom. "Well, I'll come along. See you at the dance, Ma." The two young men walked quickly away toward the main gate. Ma piled the washed dishes on a box. "Come on out," she called. And when there was no answer, "Rosasharn, you come out." The girl stepped from the tent, and she went on with the dish-wiping. "Tom was only jollyin' ya." "I know, I didn't mind. Only I hate to have folks look at me." "Ain't no way to help that. Folks gonna look, but it makes folks happy to see a girl in a family way. Makes folks sort of giggly and happy. Ain't you going to the dance?" "I was, but I don't know. I wished Connie was here." Her voice rose. "Ma, I wished he was here. I can't hardly stand it." Ma looked closely at her. "I know," she said, "but Rosasharn, don't shame your folks." "I don't aim to, Ma." "Well, don't you shame us. We got too much on us now without no shame." The girl's lip quivered. "I ain't going to the dance. I couldn't. Ma, help me." She sat down and buried her head in her arms. Ma wiped her hands on the dish towel, and she squatted down in front of her daughter, and she put her two hands on Rosasharn's hair. "You're a good girl," she said. "You always was a good girl. I'll take care of you. Don't you fret." She put an interest in her tone. "Know what you and me's gonna do. We're going to that dance, and we're gonna sit there and watch. If anybody says to come dance, why, I'll say you ain't strong enough. I'll say you're poorly. And you can hear the music and all like that." Rosasharn raised her head. "You won't let me dance?" "No, I won't." "And don't let nobody touch me?" "No, I won't." The girl sighed. She said desperately, "I don't know what I'm going to do, Ma. I just don't know. I don't know." Ma patted her knee. "Look," she said. "Look here at me. I'm going to tell you. In a little while it ain't going to be so bad. In a little while. And that's true. Now come on, we'll go get washed up, and we'll put on our nice dress, and we'll set by the dance." She led Rosasharn toward the sanitary unit. Pa and Uncle John squatted with a group of men by the porch of the office. "We nearly got work today," Pa said. "We was just a few minutes late. They already got 2 fellas. And well, sir, it was a funny thing. There's a straw boss there, and he says, 'We just got some 2-bit men. Course we could use 20-cent men. We can use a lot of 20-cent men. You go to your camp and say we'll put a lot of fellas on for 20 cents. The squatting men moved nervously. A broad-shouldered man, his face completely in the shadow of a black hat, spatted his knee with his palm. "I know it, God damn it," he cried, "and they'll get men. They'll get hungry men. You can't feed your family on 20 cents an hour, but you'll take anything. They got you going and coming. They just auction a job off. Jesus Christ, pretty soon they're going to make us pay to work. We would have took her," Pa said. "We ain't had no job. We sure would have took her, but there was them guys in there, and the way they looked, we was scared to take her." Black Hat said, "Get crazy thinking. I've been working for a fella and he can't pick his crop. Costs more just to pick her than he can get for her, and he don't know what to do. Seems to me Pa stopped. The circle was silent for him. Well, I just thought if a fella had an acre, well, my woman, she could raise a little truck and a couple pigs and some chickens, and us men could get out and find work and then go back. Kids could maybe go to school. Never seen such schools as out here. Our kids ain't happy in them schools, Black Cat said. Why not? They're pretty nice, them schools. Well, a raggedy kid with no shoes, and them other kids with socks on and nice pants, and them yelling, "Okie." My boy went to school, had a fight every day. Done good, too. Tough little bastard. Every day he got to fight. Come home with his clothes torn, his nose bloody, and his ma'd wail him. Made her stop that. No need everybody beating the hell out of him, poor little fella. Jesus, he gives some of them kids a going over, though. Them nice pants sons of bitches, I don't know. Pa demanded, well, what the hell am I going to do? We're out of money. One of my boys got a short job, but that won't feed us. I'm going to go and take 20 cents. I got to. Black Cat raised his head, and his bristled chin showed in the light, and his stringy neck where the whiskers lay flat like fur. Yeah, he said bitterly, you'll do that, and I'm a two-bit man. You'll take my job for 20 cents, and then I'll get hungry, and I'll take my job back for 15. Yeah, you go right on and do her. Well, what the hell can I do? Pa demanded. I can't starve so's you can get 2 bits. Black Cat dipped his head again, and his chin went into the shadow. I don't know, he said, I just don't know. It's bad enough to work 12 hours a day and come out just a little bit hungry, but we got to figure all the time, too. My kid ain't getting enough to eat. I can't think all the time. God damn it drives a man crazy. The circle of men shifted their feet nervously. Tom stood at the gate and watched the people coming in to the dance. A floodlight shone down into their faces. Willie Eaton said, just keep your eyes open. I'm sending Jewel Vitella over. He's half Cherokee. Nice fella. Keep your eyes open and see if you can pick out the ones. Okay, said Tom. He watched the farm families come in, the girls with braided hair and the boys polished for the dance. Jewel came and stood beside him. I'm with you, he said. Tom looked at the hawk nose and the high brown cheekbones and the slender receding chin. They says you're half Injun. You look all Injun to me. No, said Jewel, just half. Wished I was a full-blood. I'd have my land on the reservation. Them full-bloods got it pretty nice, some of them. Look at them people, Tom said. The guests were moving in through the gateway. Families from the farms, migrants from the ditch camps. Children straining to be free and quiet parents holding them back. Jewel said, these here dances done funny things. Our people got nothing, but just because they can ask their friends to come here to the dance, sets 'em up and makes 'em proud. And the folks respects 'em, count of these here dances. Fella got a little place where I was working. He come to a dance here. I asked him myself, and he come. Says we got the only decent dance in the county where a man can take his girls and his wife. Hey, look. 3 young men were coming through the gate, young working men in jeans. They walked close together. The guard at the gate questioned them, and they answered and passed through. Look at 'em careful, Jewel said. He moved to the guard. Who asked them 3? He asked. Fella named Jackson, Unit 4. Jewel came back to Tom. I think them's our fellas. How you know? I don't know how. I just got a feeling. They're kind of scared. Follow 'em and tell Willie to look 'em over, and tell Willie to check with Jackson, Unit 4. Get 'em to see if they're all right. I'll stay here. Tom strolled after the 3 young men. They moved toward the dance floor and took their positions quietly on the edge of the crowd. Tom saw Willie near the band and signaled him. What you want? Willie asked. Them 3, see, there. Yeah, they say a fella named Jackson, Unit 4, asked him. Willie craned his neck and saw Houston and called him over. Them 3 fellas, he said. We better get Jackson, Unit 4, and see if he asked him. Houston turned on his heel and walked away, and in a few moments he was back with a lean and bony Kansan. This here's Jackson, Houston said. Look, Jackson, see them 3 young fellas? Yeah. Well, did you ask 'em? No. Ever seen 'em before? Jackson peered at them. Sure, worked at Gregorio's with them. So they knowed your name? Sure, I worked right beside 'em. All right, Houston said, don't you go near 'em. We ain't going to throw 'em out if they're nice. Thanks, Mr. Jackson. Good work, he said to Tom. I guess them's the fellas. Jewel picked 'em out, said Tom. Hell, no wonder, said Willie. His Injun blood smelled 'em. Well, I'll point 'em out to the boys. A 16-year-old boy came running through the crowd. He stopped, panting, in front of Houston. Mr. Houston, he said, I've been like you said. There's a car with 6 men parked down by the eucalyptus trees, and there's one with 4 men up that north side road. I asked 'em for a match. They got guns. I seen 'em." Houston's eyes grew hard and cruel. "Willie," he said, "you sure you got everything ready?" Willie grinned happily. "Sure have, Mr. Houston. Ain't gonna be no trouble. Well, don't hurt 'em. Remember now, if you can, quiet and nice. I kinda like to see 'em. Be in my tent." "I'll see what we can do," said Willie. Dancing had not formally started, but now Willie climbed onto the platform. "Choose up your squares," he called. The music stopped. Boys and girls, young men and women, ran about until 8 squares were ready on the big floor, ready and waiting. The girls held their hands in front of them and squirmed their fingers. The boys tapped their feet restlessly. Around the floor the old folks sat, smiling slightly, holding the children back from the floor. And in the distance the Jesus lovers sat with hard, condemning faces and watched the sin. Ma and Rosa Sharn sat on a bench and watched, and as each boy asked Rosa Sharn as a partner, Ma said, "No, she ain't well," and Rosa Sharn blushed and her eyes were bright. The caller stepped to the middle of the floor and held up his hands. "All ready? Then let her go." The music snarled out chicken reel, shrill and clear, fiddles skirling, harmonicas nasal and sharp, and the guitars booming on the bass strings. The caller named the turns, the squares moved, and they danced forward and back, hands round, swing your lady. The caller in a frenzy tapped his feet, strutted back and forth, went through the figures as he called them. Swing your ladies and a dulce-do, join hands round and away we go. The music rose and fell, and the moving shoes beating in time on the platform sounded like drums. Swing to the right and a swing to the left, break. Now break, back to back. The caller sang the high, vibrant monotone. Now the girls' hair lost the careful combing. Now perspiration stood out on the foreheads of the boys. Now the experts showed the tricky intersteps. And the old people on the edge of the floor took up the rhythm, patted their hands softly, and tapped their feet. And they smiled gently and then caught one another's eyes and nodded. Ma leaned her head close to Rosa Sharn's ear. "Maybe you wouldn't think it, but your pa was as nice a dancer as I ever seen when he was young." And Ma smiled. "Makes me think of old times," she said. And on the faces of the watchers the smiles were of old times. "Up near Muskogee 20 years ago there was a blind man with a fiddle. I seen a fellow once could slap his heels 4 times in one jump. Swedes up in Dakota know what they do sometimes? Put pepper on the flooring. Gets up the ladies' skirts and makes 'em pretty lively. Lively as a filly in season. Swedes do that sometimes." In the distance the Jesus lovers watched their restive children. "Look on sin," they said. "Them folks is riding to hell on a poker. It's a shame the godly got to see it." And their children were silent and nervous. "One more round and then a little rest," the caller chanted. "Hit her hard, 'cause we're going to stop soon." And the girls were damp and flushed, and they danced with open mouths and serious, reverent faces. And the boys flung back their long hair and pranced, pointed their toes and clicked their heels. In and out the squares moved, crossing, backing, whirling, and the music shrilled. Then suddenly it stopped. The dancers stood still, panting with fatigue, and the children broke from restraint, dashed on the floor, chased one another madly, ran, slid, stole caps, and pulled hair. The dancers sat down, fanning themselves with their hands. The members of the band got up and stretched themselves and sat down again. And the guitar players worked softly over their strings. Now Willie called, "Choose again for another square if you can." The dancers scrambled to their feet, and new dancers plunged forward for partners. Tom stood near the 3 young men. He saw them force their way through out on the floor toward one of the forming squares. He waved his hand at Willie, and Willie spoke to the fiddler. The fiddler squawked his bow across the strings. 20 young men lounged slowly across the floor. The 3 reached the square, and one of them said, "I'll dance with this here." A blond boy looked up in astonishment. "She's my partner." "Listen, you little son of a bitch." Off in the darkness a shrill whistle sounded. The 3 were walled in now, and each one felt the grip of hands. And then the wall of men moved slowly off the platform. Willie yelped, "Let's go." The music shrilled out. The caller intoned the figures. The feet thudded on the platform. A touring car drove to the entrance. The driver called, "Open up. We hear you got a riot." The guard kept his position. "We got no riot. Listen to that music. Who are you?" "Deputy sheriffs." "Got a warrant?" "We don't need a warrant if there's a riot." "Well, we got no riots here," said the gate guard. The men in the car listened to the music and the sound of the caller, and then the car pulled slowly away and parked in a crossroad and waited. In the moving squad, each of the 3 young men was pinioned, and a hand was over each mouth. When they reached the darkness, the group opened up. Tom said that sure was did nice. He held both arms of his victim from behind. Willie ran over to them from the dance floor. Nice work, he said. Only need 6 now. Houston wants to see these here fellers. Houston himself emerged from the darkness. These the ones? Sure, said Jewel. Went right up and started it. But they didn't even swing once. Let's look at 'em. The prisoners were swung around to face him. Their heads were down. Houston put a flashlight beam in each sullen face. What did you want to do it for? He asked. There was no answer. Who the hell told you to do it? God darn it, we didn't do nothing. We was just going to dance. No, you wasn't, Jewel said. You was going to sock that kid. Tom said, Mr. Houston, just when these here fellas moved in, somebody give a whistle. Yeah, I know. The cops come right to the gate. He turned back. We ain't going to hurt you now. Who told you to come bust up our dance? He waited for a reply. You're our own folks, Houston said sadly. You belong with us. How'd you happen to come? We know all about it, he added. Well, goddammit, a fella got to eat. Well, who sent you? Who paid you to come? We ain't been paid. And you ain't gonna be. No fight, no pay. Ain't that right? One of the pinioned men said, Do what you want. We ain't gonna tell nothing. Houston's head sank down for a moment, and then he said softly, Okay, don't tell. But look here. Don't knife your own folks. We're trying to get along, having fun, and keep in order. Don't tear all that down. Just think about it. You're just harming yourself. All right, boys, put 'em over the back fence, and don't hurt 'em. They don't know what they're doing. The squad moved slowly toward the rear of the camp, and Houston looked after them. Jewel said, Let's just take one good kick at 'em. No, you don't, Willie cried. I said we wouldn't. Just one nice little kick, Jewel pleaded. Just loft 'em over the fence. No, sir, Willie insisted. Listen, you, he said. We're letting you off this time, but you take back the word. If this ever happens here again, we'll just naturally kick the hell out of whoever comes. We'll bust every bone in their body. Now you tell your boys that. Houston says you're our kind of folks. Maybe. I'd hate to think it. They neared the fence. 2 of the seated guards stood up and moved over. Got some fellas going home early, said Willie. The 3 men climbed over the fence and disappeared into the darkness. And the squad moved quickly back toward the dance floor, and the music of old Dan Tucker skirled and whined from the string band. Over near the office, the men still squatted and talked, and the shrill music came to them. Pa said, There's change a-comin'. I don't know what. Maybe we won't live to see her, but she's a-comin'. There's a restless feelin'. Fella can't figure nothin' out. He's so nervous. And Black Cat lifted his head up again, and the light fell on his bristly whiskers. He gathered some little rocks from the ground and shot them like marbles with his thumb. I don't know. She's comin' all right, like you say. Fella told me what happened in Akron, Ohio. Rubber companies. They got mountain people in 'cause they'd work cheap. And these here mountain people up and joined the union. Well, sir, hell just popped. All them storekeepers and legionnaires and people like that, they get drillin' and yellin' red, and they're gonna run the union right out of Akron. Preachers get preachin' about it, and papers yowlin', and there's pick handles put out by the rubber companies, and they're buying gas. Jesus, you'd think them mountain boys was regular devils. He stopped and found some more rocks to shoot. Well, sir, it was last March, and one Sunday 5,000 of them mountain men had a turkey shoot outside of town. 5,000 of them just marched through town with their rifles, and they had their turkey shoot, and then they marched back. And that's all they done. Well, sir, there ain't been no trouble since then. These here citizens' committees give back the pick handles, and the storekeepers keep their stores, and nobody been clubbed, nor tarred and feathered, and nobody been killed. There was a long silence, and then Black Hat said, They're getting pretty mean out here. Burn that camp and beat up folks. I've been thinking. All our folks got guns. I've been thinking maybe we ought to get up a turkey shooting club and have meetings every Sunday. The men looked up at him and then down at the ground, and their feet moved restlessly, and they shifted their weight from one leg to the other.